Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your country exists because an opera audience became angry, or because two political leaders met in the desert and decided that several small kingdoms would function better as one federation, or because a foreign power wanted to dig a canal through someone else's territory. Countries like to describe their births with solemn words: independence, unity, destiny, liberation. The real stories are usually less dignified. Some countries began with carefully negotiated treaties. Others emerged from collapsed empires, military revolts, commercial experiments, royal marriages, or borders designed by people who had never visited the land. A few were created almost by accident. These are not imaginary micronations declared from someone's bedroom. They are internationally recognized states, with governments, passports, armies, airports, and seats at the United Nations. But their origin stories sound like discarded movie scripts. These are some of the strangest ways countries were ever formed. Belgium, a country born after an opera. On the evening of August 25, 1830, an audience gathered at the Théâtre de la Monnaie in Brussels. They had come to watch an opera. The performance was La Muette de Portici, a dramatic story about a rebellion in Naples against foreign rule. The opera contained patriotic songs, emotional speeches, and characters rising against their rulers. Normally, the audience would applaud, leave the theater, and return home. That night, they did something else. Many walked into the streets. Brussels was already tense. The southern provinces of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands were deeply divided from the northern provinces. The Dutch king, William I, ruled both regions, but the people in the south were largely Catholic, while the north was predominantly Protestant. French was widely used among southern elites. Dutch dominated the government. There were disputes over religion, language, political representation, taxation, and royal authority. There had also been a poor harvest. Food prices were rising. Unemployment was spreading. The opera did not create those problems. It gave them a soundtrack. After the performance, crowds gathered, shouted political slogans, damaged property, and attacked symbols connected to Dutch authority. The unrest expanded beyond Brussels. Volunteers arrived from other towns. Citizen militias formed. The Dutch government sent troops into the capital on September 23. Instead of restoring order, the occupation united groups that had previously distrusted one another. For 4 days, fighting continued through the streets. On the night of September 26, Dutch forces withdrew. A provisional government took control. On October 4, 1830, it declared Belgium independent. One of Europe's modern states had emerged after an opera about another country's revolution inspired an audience to begin their own. The music ended. The revolution continued. Panama. Independence built around a canal. Panama's geography had attracted foreign attention for centuries. It was a narrow strip of land separating the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Anyone who controlled a route through it could shorten global shipping journeys by thousands of kilometers. By the late 19th century, Panama was not an independent country. It was part of Colombia. French engineers had attempted to build a canal across the isthmus beginning in 1880. The project collapsed after disease, financial scandal, and engineering failure killed thousands of workers and consumed enormous amounts of money. The United States then became interested. American leaders wanted a canal that could move commercial and naval ships rapidly between the two oceans. In 1902, the United States decided that Panama was the preferred location. Washington negotiated the hurried Treaty with Colombia. The agreement would have allowed the United States to construct and control the canal zone. The Colombian Senate rejected it. The rejection did not end the canal project. It changed the country in which the canal would be built. Panamanian separatists had attempted to break from Colombia before. Now they gained an exceptionally powerful supporter. In November 1903, a new revolt began. Theodore Roosevelt's administration sent American warships toward Panama City and Cologne. The vessels prevented Colombian forces from responding effectively to the separation. On November 3, Panama declared independence. The United States recognized the new republic three days later. Then came the treaty. Panama appointed Philippe Bunau-Varilla as its diplomatic representative in Washington. He was a French engineer and canal promoter. He was not Panamanian. He negotiated the Bunau-Varilla Treaty, granting the United States extensive control over a canal zone roughly 10 miles wide. In exchange, Panama received $10 million, annual payments, and an American guarantee of its independence. The canal opened in 1914. Panama had genuine regional grievances and a history of separatist movements. Its independence was not invented entirely in Washington, but the timing, military protection, rapid recognition, and canal agreement were inseparable from American strategy. A country separated from Colombia. A canal passed through the separation. The canal was not built because Panama became independent. Panama became independent partly because someone wanted to build the canal. Liberia, an American experiment planted in Africa. Liberia's name comes from the Latin word for freedom. Its capital, Monrovia, was named after American President James Monroe. Its flag resembles that of the United States. None of this is accidental. In 1816, a group of American politicians, ministers, slaveholders, and reformers created the American Colonization Society. Its objective was to relocate free black Americans to Africa. The organization united people who agreed on almost nothing else. Some members opposed slavery and believed free black communities could build an independent future in Africa. Others supported slavery and viewed free black Americans as a political threat to the slave system. They reached the same policy for opposite reasons. Rem of all, most free black Americans rejected the plan. They had been born in the United States and considered it their country. The society proceeded anyway. In 1820, its first organized group sailed toward West Africa. Disease killed many of the settlers. The society struggled to acquire territory because local African leaders were not eager to surrender land. In 1821, United States Navy officer Robert Stockton helped force a local ruler to sell land near Cape Meserado. A settlement was established there. It became Monrovia. Over the following decades, free black settlers from the United States arrived alongside Africans liberated from intercepted slave ships. The settlers brought American institutions, clothing, architecture, religion, political ideas, and social divisions. They became known as Americo-Liberians. They were a small minority surrounded by indigenous African populations whose political systems already existed. In 1847, the colony declared itself the Independent Republic of Liberia. Its first president, Joseph Jenkins Roberts, had been born in Virginia. The country's constitution was modeled partly on that of the United States. Yet the United States did not formally recognize Liberia until 1862, during the American Civil War. Washington had helped produce a state it hesitated to recognize. Liberia was presented as a homeland for freedom. It was also built through coercive land acquisition, racial exclusion, and the transplantation of an American political class onto an African coast. Freedom arrived. It brought a colonial administration with it, the United Arab Emirates. A federation assembled before a deadline for much of the 19th and 20th centuries. The small sheikdoms along the southern Persian Gulf existed under British protection. They were known as the Trucial States. Britain handled much of their external defense and restricted their independent foreign relations. The arrangement was designed to protect trade routes and suppress maritime conflict. It was not intended to create a single country. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Sharjah, Ajman, Fujairah, Al Quwain, and Ras Al Khaimah had separate rulers, local rivalries, different resources, and competing interests. Then Britain decided to leave. In January 1968, the British government announced that it would withdraw its military forces from the Gulf by the end of 1971. The sheikhdom suddenly faced a deadline. They could remain separate and vulnerable, or they could build a federation. On February 18, 1968, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi met Sheikh Rashid bin Sayed Al Maktoum of Dubai near the boundary between their territories. The meeting created the foundation of a union. The original plan was larger than the modern United Arab Emirates. 9 states participated in negotiations. The 7 Trucial states, Bahrain, and Qatar. They attempted to design a federation that could balance rulers, territory, population, oil wealth, representation, and political authority. It failed. Bahrain chose independence. Qatar did the same. The remaining 7 continued negotiating, but Ras Al Khaimah initially stayed outside. On December 2, 1971, 6 Emirates formed the United Arab Emirates. Ras Al Khaimah joined in February 1972. The country was not created by conquering army zones or a mass nationalist revolution. It was constructed through bargaining between hereditary rulers responding to the scheduled departure of a foreign protector. Each emirate retained substantial local authority. Abu Dhabi became the federal capital. Its ruler became president. Dubai's ruler became vice president and prime minister. A rotating compromise would have been democratic. A permanent arrangement was more practical. The British withdrawal removed the roof. 7 households agreed to share a building, Tanzania. Two countries combined, their names. Tanganyika became independent from Britain on December 9, 1961. Zanzibar, an island archipelago off the East African coast, became independent in December 1963. They were separate states. Their histories were different. Tanganyika had been part of German East Africa before passing to British administration after the First World War. Zanzibar had been ruled by a sultan and shaped by centuries of Indian Ocean trade, Arab political influence, African labor, and the legacy of slavery. Then Zanzibar exploded. On January 12, 1964, revolutionaries overthrew Sultan Jamshid bin Abdullah. The uprising was violent. Thousands of people were killed, displaced, or detained, particularly members of Arab and South Asian communities. A revolutionary government took power under Abeid Amani Karume. The Cold War had arrived in the Indian Ocean. Western governments feared that Zanzibar might become an African version of Cuba. Eastern Bloc states moved quickly to establish relationships with the revolutionary regime. Across the water, Tanganyikan President Julius Nyerere faced his own instability, including an army mutiny in January 1964. 3 months after the Zanzibar Revolution, the two governments announced a union. The Articles of Union were signed on April 22nd. On April 26, 1964, Tanganyika and Zanzibar became one sovereign state. At first, it was called the United Republic of Tanganyika and Zanzibar. That name was accurate. It was also exhausting. A public competition was reportedly used to find something shorter. The winning construction combined parts of both names. Tan came from Tanganyika. Zan came from Zanzibar. The ending Ia created Tanzania. The union government controlled major matters such as defense and foreign affairs, while Zanzibar retained its own president, legislature, and authority over many domestic issues. It was one country with two governments. Two states entered the agreement. One of their names was cut in half. The other was cut even more. Nation building became an editing exercise. Pakistan. One country with another country in the middle. When British India was partitioned in August 1947, two independent states emerged. India occupied most of the subcontinent. Pakistan was created as a homeland for Muslims. But Pakistan did not begin as one connected territory. It had two wings. West Pakistan included regions that are now Pakistan. East Pakistan was more than 1,600 kilometers away, in the territory now known as Bangladesh. India stood between them. The two wings shared Islam. They did not share a border, a dominant language, or equal political power. East Pakistan contained more people. Bengali was spoken by most of its population. The political and military establishment was concentrated in the West. In 1948, Pakistan's leadership promoted Urdu as the national language. Bengali speakers resisted. On February 21, 1952, police fired on student demonstrators in Dhaka during the Bengali language movement. Several were killed. Language became evidence that religious identity alone could not erase geography, culture, and political inequality. Economic resentment deepened. Many East Pakistanis believed revenue generated in their region was being spent disproportionately in the West. In the 1970 national election, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's Awami League won an absolute majority in Pakistan's National Assembly. Its support came overwhelmingly from the East. Under parliamentary rules, it should have formed the national government. Power was not transferred. Political negotiations collapsed. On March 25, 1971, the Pakistani military launched Operation Searchlight in East Pakistan. Mass arrests, killings, displacement, and widespread atrocities followed. Millions of refugees fled into India. A war of independence began. India intervened militarily in December 1971. Pakistani forces in the east surrendered on December 16. East Pakistan became Bangladesh. Pakistan had been created as one country divided into two distant pieces. 24 years later, geography completed the argument. A nation can survive without territorial continuity. It cannot survive indefinitely when one half rules the other. Lesotho. A country that survived by retreating upward. Lesotho is completely surrounded by South Africa. It is one of only 3 sovereign states in the world enclosed entirely within another country. Its existence is tied to mountains. In the early 19th century, Southern Africa was shaken by warfare, migration, raiding, and political collapse. Communities were displaced. Smaller groups were absorbed or destroyed. A leader named Moshoshu gathered refugees and followers in the region that later became Lesotho. Instead of expanding across open plains, he moved upward. Around 1824, Moshoshu established his stronghold at Thaba, a sandstone plateau with steep cliffs and a flat summit. The mountain was difficult to attack, its paths were narrow, its top contained grazing land and access to water. People fleeing war could gather there. Livestock could be protected. Enemy forces struggled to climb it. Moshoshu used more than geography. He built alliances, absorbed displaced communities, distributed cattle, negotiated with missionaries, and turned former enemies into subjects. A kingdom grew around a fortress that looked like a natural table. Then Boer settlers expanded into neighboring territory. Conflict intensified over land. Moshoshu faced a problem. His kingdom could not defeat every surrounding force indefinitely, so he requested protection from another empire, Britain. In 1868, Basutoland became a British protectorate. British protection preserved the kingdom from absorption by the neighboring Boer republics, although it also placed the territory under colonial control. When the Union of South Africa was created in 1910, many expected Basutoland eventually to be incorporated into it. That never happened. The territory remained under British administration until it became the independent Kingdom of Lesotho on October 4th, 1966. Lesotho survived because its founder retreated to a defensible mountain, gathered people fleeing regional chaos, and later invited one foreign power to stop another local power from taking the land. Most countries celebrate the territory they conquered. Lesotho exists because of the territory it refused to lose. And then there is the Gambia. Look at a map of West Africa. The Gambia appears as a thin strip pushed deep into Senegal. It follows the Gambia River for hundreds of kilometers while remaining only a few dozen kilometers wide in many places. It looks less like a country than a river wearing sleeves. A popular story claims its borders were determined by the range of British naval cannons. According to the legend, British ships sailed along the river, fired cannonballs in both directions, and claimed all land within range. It is memorable. It is probably not true. The real explanation is less theatrical but equally strange. Britain controlled trade along the Gambia River. France controlled most of the surrounding territory that became Senegal. During the 19th century, both empires negotiated where their possessions ended. The boundaries were defined through diplomatic agreements, mapping, and later surveys. The country's narrow form reflected British determination to preserve access to the river while French territory surrounded it. The colonial line remained when the Gambia gained independence in 1965. In 1982, the Gambia and Senegal created a loose confederation called Senegambia. It was intended to coordinate defense, foreign policy, and economic affairs. The arrangement collapsed in 1989. The map returned to its unusual logic. One country surrounds almost all of another country. The smaller country surrounds a river. The river explains both. These stories reveal something uncomfortable. Countries often present themselves as ancient, natural objects. They are not. Belgium was produced by economic tension, religious division, political rebellion, and one unusually well-timed opera. Panama separated from Colombia while American warships protected a canal project. Liberia emerged from an American movement that tried to solve racism by exporting black Americans. The United Arab Emirates formed because British protection had an expiration date. Tanzania joined a mainland state and a revolutionary island, then merged their names. Pakistan began as two territories divided by another country, and eventually split along that impossible geography. Lesotho survived by climbing a mountain and asking an empire for protection. The Gambia became a narrow national corridor because Britain wanted a river, and France wanted almost everything around it. None of these countries is less real because its origin was strange. That may be the most important point. Once institutions form, borders harden, children learn a national history, and generations grow up beneath the same flag. An improvised political arrangement begins to feel permanent. The accident becomes tradition. The negotiation becomes destiny. The border becomes sacred. Every country has a founding story. Behind the anthem and the monument, there is usually something less poetic: a failed treaty, a commercial route, a frightened ruler, a departing empire, a revolutionary crowd. A line placed on a map because two foreign governments needed the argument to end before dinner. Countries are not geological formations. They do not rise naturally from the earth. They are agreements about who belongs together, which government collects the taxes, and where another government must stop. Some agreements are built through centuries of shared history. Others are assembled quickly under pressure. And sometimes, all it takes is an opera, a canal, a mountain, or a name created by cutting two older names into pieces. History calls the result a nation. The map makes it look inevitable.